Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bold Moves Business Podcast. I am your host, Angela Merzib, and joining me today is Lindsay White. She is a sought-out executive coach, podcast host, and people operations expert dedicated to fostering great leadership, impactful people strategies, and inspiring work cultures. She founded her business, High Voltage Leadership, to help leaders at all levels create authentic leadership styles grounded in values and purpose. Drawing from 15 years in strategic talent management, Lindsay guides leaders in crafting inclusive cultures and effective people strategies. Her approach connects teams with purpose, leading to exceptional results. By focusing on people strategy, team engagement, and leadership development, she aids clients in achieving business goals while creating work environments where everyone feels like they belong. Welcome to my episode or my podcast, Lindsay.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here today.
Awesome. I'm so glad you can join me. I know you're a busy lady, but I'm so glad you're here. I think this is going to be a great episode. So starting off, I know your journey into entrepreneurship started off with a bit of an unexpected bang, shall we say, like a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to. Can you share that story of finding yourself in a toxic work environment after 10-year career there, and how did it shape your journey into becoming an executive coach and leadership expert?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm totally an accidental entrepreneur. I often say I have no business running a business, and yet just celebrated my 5th anniversary. So I worked for a financial institution that's based here in Alberta, and I'd worked there for 10 years, and I'd really built myself a really beautiful career and incredible relationships, and I still have some remarkable friendships that others that have left and people that still work there. And I worked very hard, but I was also very pleased with the work I did, the people I worked with, and I am an HR professional, right? So have a technical background in human resources and strategic talent management, and I was really in a space where I was doing the work I loved. I was working with the people I loved. And what happened is I ended up working for a very toxic boss, someone who, I often refer to as a narcissistic sociopathic gaslighter. And I sort of say that tongue in cheek, but the truth is, someone who was really not interested in actually being an effective and supportive leader, was actually far more interested in power and control. And being that I am a people pleaser, I spent 2 years working very, very hard to make this person happy. And that actually was never going to happen. She was never going to be pleased with the work I did. I stood out too much. I was too different. I was too provocative. And I asked far too many questions. And so, she made it her mission to make sure that I knew what my place was. And she
Mhm.
reiterated that over and over again. And so I spent a couple years just working my tail off. And then one day I was in a meeting with her, and in reality, looking back, she only ever called to talk to me when she really wanted to give me shit about something, right? Like it was something that she perceived I had done wrong. And so we were in one more of those meetings, and of course she showed up late, per usual. And then, I had something completed a process to the point where all she literally had to do was put her signature on it. I had everything organized, all the stakeholders line up, everything ready to go. And she decided it wasn't good enough. And as I'm listening to her, thinking, I can't believe that this is happening, right? Like I have done all the right things. I've gotten everything organized. This is completely wired. And she made some comment, and I said in response, you know what? Like, I think you're right. I don't think I fit here anymore. And
Oh.
that was really impactful for me because this was a place where I did feel like I was part of the family. So
Yeah.
I said, you know what? This isn't working for me anymore. I
Mm.
think I'm done. And at that point, I closed my computer And I was in one of our office locations, and I left that location and came home. And I never looked back. Of course, being an HR professional, I could calculate my own severance. And so I did that. And I also made sure that I negotiated my coaching certification as part of my exit strategy, because I knew I was going to be a coach. I did a lot of that. Sorry.
That's okay.
I did a lot of that work as part of my HR role, right? I worked with senior leaders and C-suite executives, and I knew that I wanted to coach, and I wanted to coach leaders to be better leaders. And certainly, having had this very personal experience, that really reinforced the mission. So I left my corporate role. I went immediately into my coaching certification process, and I spent about 18 months really deeply immersed and being really a student of the practice of coaching. And in that process, I really, worked closely with my coaching peers, received some great coaching myself. Let's be clear, we all need a coach.
Yeah.
And they challenged me to start my own practice. And so that's really why I am where I am today, working in my own practice as high voltage leadership, working with leaders, executives, teams, small businesses, to try and prevent them from making some of these mistakes that can really impact progress.
Yeah, so important. I mean, culture is everything in a business. It's like the law of entropy or whatever that is, where nothing, like if the leadership is narcissistic and abusive and toxic, it can only flow down from there. Like it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
As right.
Yeah.
So there's no sense having sort of like the worst of us leading us, because we're not going to be better than our leader, right? So
Totally.
important to have.
Yeah. Well, Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have the best business strategy. You can have the best capital plan. You can have the best marketing. And if you don't have the right people and the right culture so that they are doing the things together, none of those other pieces have any meaning.
Yeah, I would argue that culture is strategy. Like, what is his name? Tony. I can't remember his last name. The founder of Zappos, the shoe company in the U.S. That was his strategy, was the culture.
Yes.
And making people happy. That was his strategy, both internally and externally. So
100%.
strategy is culture. Culture is strategy. And more people are looking into like, not only how much am I going to make a year, what are my benefits, but they're looking at what is your culture, and they're asking these types of questions in job interviews, right?
100%.
We don't want to be, stressed out just to make a few bucks to be able to live our lives anymore. We want to actually, fit in and feel like we're safe and fulfilled and all these things, which is great. So how it sounds like from your description that you stood out too much and you asked too many questions. Sounds like you were already like an entrepreneur in the making, because most of us are like that. We kind of question the status quo. Why is it done this way? I have a better way. This is stupid. Why can't I do it my way? Right. We're kind of like that. So it kind of seems like,
it's true. It's absolutely true.
Awesome. So about navigating toxic environments. So from your experience, like I know when you describe the leader that you were with there as a narcissist and stuff like that, I know from my own experience and my dealings with narcissists, they have a really hard time. Like it's something that hides itself from you. Like because you are that, you don't have very good self-awareness. But for leaders that are a bit more self-aware, from your experience, can you share some strategies for leaders to be able to navigate and address these toxic team dynamics before they escalate, before they get out of control? And what signs should they look out for?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because that's the truth, right? Like they can escalate pretty quickly. So, first things first, I think really understanding yourself as a leader and feeling confident about your own abilities, making sure that it's very grounded in your own values, right? Leadership is very personal. It's an inside job. And
Yeah.
so the first thing we can do is make sure that we have that deep connection and understanding. And then the second thing we can do is actually lean into our own courage. When we have a toxic work environment or we feel like it's moving in that direction, we need to start having really crunchy conversations, right? We
Mm.
need to be clear about expectations. We need actually to go, really dig deep into our culture. And culture is how we get work done together. That's the sort of basic definition. And so if how we get work done together is grounded in a value of kindness, then we
Mm.
need to have crunchy conversations about what does it mean to be kind in our business? How do we show kindness? How do we behave in a way that is kind? And then
Mm.
when people are not being kind in the way that we've described it, we need to talk about that. So, for example, in a lot of toxic environments, we get into like the gossip, right?
Mm.
That's a very common piece. So, again, if our culture is rooted in kindness and we need to define that for our team and ourselves, then we can talk to people about this is a value we all hold. We all want to be kind. What does that look like for us? How do we show kindness to each other in our organization, at our workplace?
Yeah.
And we need to be clear that gossiping is unkind and it
Yeah.
isn't tolerated. And then if we continue to see it, we need to be bold in confronting it. And I'm not talking about confronting like yelling and screaming, calling people out in public. In fact, that's toxic behavior right there. We
Yeah.
need to approach people and say, I need to talk to you about some behavior that I have seen or understand to be happening that is not part of our culture. And I want to talk to you about that. We need to be willing to spend the time and effort. We need to get under the hood. What is going on that is causing things like gossip or
Mm.
other toxic behaviors? And we need to listen. We need to use our ears and our mouth in the proportion they exist on our face.
Mm.
We need to be willing to hear people and understand them. That's what beats the toxicity in a culture.
Yeah. So important to be kind, like you say. And I'm assuming by crunchy conversations, you're talking about difficult conversation to
Yep.
have, right? So how would you say, how do you balance kindness and having those tough, sometimes brutally honest conversations?
Yeah. So I subscribe, this is a Brene Brown phrase, but I subscribe to this theory wholeheartedly. Clear is kind.
Yes. Yeah.
The best way to do this is to
Mm.
be very clear and
Yeah.
to lead and wrap all of that clarity in kindness. So when we beat around the bush with people, when we don't talk about the thing,
Mm.
when we leave room for assumptions and extrapolations, we're being unkind. We need to sit people down, and if we can do it face to face, all the better. But in our virtual world, we have to leverage technology. So we genuinely need to connect with people, and we need to be very clear about what we want to talk about. We can also be vulnerable. And I know
Mm.
that's kind of a dirty word in the business world, but we can say, I need to talk to you today about something that's really important, but it's also a really difficult topic. I feel very strange having this. I'm very nervous. I have to have a difficult conversation with you today about
Mm.
something that I have seen or heard you've been doing. And I have to tell you, I'm uncomfortable because I know this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but I need
Mhm.
to talk to you about it anyways. We have to be brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way, right? If we don't talk about these things, this is the stuff that festers and grows and becomes that toxic undertone in our teams and our organizations.
Yeah, I fully agree. Clear is kind. I love that. I
Yeah.
had a business coach one time talk about, and this was in dealing with clients and having difficult conversations with them, which is usually the money conversation, right? And he talked about the tension is held in what you don't say, not in
Yes.
what you do say,
Yes.
because then you're just ruminating. Oh, I
Yes.
should have said that. I should have,
Yeah.
why? And you're just ruminating, and it makes everything worse. So
Yes.
yeah, clear is kind, and approaching it from the standpoint of like, how can we work on this together, right? Like
Yes.
this that sort of attitude versus just blame, blame, blame. But how can we get past this? How can we find a solution? So I hear you on that.
Yeah.
So important, right?
It really is. It really is important. And it is okay to say that you're uncomfortable with this conversation
Yeah, I love
because
that.
it's going to be hard, right?
Right. Right. I so appreciate the people in my life that are like just completely honest and open with me. It's like it's so
Yes.
refreshing. You never see that and you're like, "Oh,
No,
cool."
no, it's
Right?
It's true, and the skill set's transferable. I mean, you just talked about it. We have
Yeah,
to have difficult conversations in all sorts of spaces. We have
right.
difficult conversations with our spouses or our kids or our girlfriends or our clients or our vendors and with our team. And so the truth is the more you practice, the better you get. That it's just
Totally.
that simple. I still don't, I mean, I teach people how to do this. This is one of my most popular workshops. Like, I gotta tell you, I've already done like a half a dozen of these this year. I call them courageous conversations because I think that's what it is. Well, you could call them crunchy or difficult or whatever. But I mean, over and over again, I help people learn how to do this particular skill because it is absolutely one of the most versatile things we can do and one of the
Yeah.
best tools we have in our own leadership style.
Yeah, I would love to attend a workshop like that. I think it'd be so
Well,
valuable.
I'll send you an
Say.
email the next time I
Yeah.
have.
Okay. That's awesome. But like you say, I've learned so much about myself through being an entrepreneur, and I've done so much self-improvement and crushing limiting beliefs and all that
Yeah.
that I would have never had to do or thought of doing if I wasn't as an entrepreneur. It's kind of incredible, actually. Um, but you emphasize knowing, I mean, it's important to know your values and in order to be able to set strong boundaries.
Yeah.
Can you explain as you started your own business? I'm sure you had to do that work in discovering
Yes.
what are my values now. I'm starting a business. I am a leader. I'm teaching other leaders, but I'm also a leader.
Yeah.
How did you go about discovering your own values for your business? And how did that impact your own leadership style? And what practical advice would you give to others starting their business
Yeah.
and trying to learn this for themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that really actually helped underline some important values for me was my exit. And doing that in such dramatic fashion. But it really reinforced to me that, my most core value is authenticity. I felt like
Mm,
for a decade, I couldn't be myself. And so as I unpacked that through my coach training, again, I got to work with some incredible peers. We're learning, we're trying, we're coaching with each other. I got to tell you, that was one of the best times of my life. And so, really, when we think about our values, sometimes those pieces that are the most challenging, the places where we feel the most discomfort, where we feel
mhm.
the most friction, those are the spaces that are helping us define our values. Because when we feel really deeply uncomfortable, it's because there's a value that's being compromised.
Yeah.
Because our values are some of the most important parts of ourself, right? They're the foundation, they're part of our foundation, right? What we care about the most. And so the truth is, you know, actually often just pausing to think about, when do I feel at my best? When do things feel really joyful and fulfilling? And on the opposite, when do I feel at my worst? When do things feel really compromising and really out of control or really messy? Those can help us underline what those
Mhm.
values are. And of course, we take those into our leadership. So if my value is authenticity, then I need to show up in my leadership in a way that is deeply authentic for me. And that includes things like my value of kindness. I am deeply kind. And let me be clear, I'm not always nice. Nice.
Yeah, there's a difference, right?
That's a whole nother conversation. I am not always nice, but I am always kind.
Yeah.
I also have a big value of integrity. I
Mm,
do what I say I'm going to do simply because I said it, not because anybody's watching. Well, how do I translate that in my leadership? Well, I do what I say I'm going to do, and I make sure that I do it first, because that's, leaders have to lead,
yeah.
right? It also shows up in my business. I do what I say I'm going to do, even when it's not profitable. I do it
Mhm.
because it's the right thing, not because it's the thing that generates revenue. Those two things don't always connect. And so that's really what it's all about is, first and foremost, spending the time doing the work. This is where having a great coach can come to be very valuable,
Yeah.
right? What is it that you stand for? What do you stand against?
Yes.
What do you want people to feel when they follow you? How have you felt? Where are the best leaders in your life? What did they do that was so awesome for you? What are some of the worst ones? What did they do? What do you never want to experience again? What do you never want anyone else in the whole universe to experience? I mean, that's certainly part of my mission. I don't want anyone else to work for someone like I did,
Yeah.
right? I don't want women to run businesses and be a leader like that, because I don't think most of us want to be, right? Like I believe that people genuinely do want to lead and be a good leader,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Most people. Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also important to, as you're exploring your values, to not just let them be, sayings on a boardroom wall. I think we need to live those out, right, in
Yes.
our business, not just, oh, I've done this exercise and they're on a piece of paper, but no, we have to embody those, live those, and
Yes. Yes.
um,
Yeah.
the other thing is, like, if you have a team, right? You're starting a business, you have a team now. How do we um, like teach that team that this is our? Because I'm assuming that your values then become your culture, right?
Yes.
That's where it
They
all stems
form your
from.
culture for
They
sure.
form your culture. So how do we get our team on board with our values and our culture? I guess it starts at the hiring stage. We're going to hire, and hopefully people are attracted to us that have similar values. But how do we get
Not
everybody on the same page?
Yeah, not hopefully, intentionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, hope is not a business strategy, right?
No, true.
No, but you nailed it. So we have to be clear about our values, and then we have to be really thoughtful about how do we bring those values to life, and we do that through our behaviors. So how do I demonstrate integrity? Because when it becomes for example, I'm that person that I will go out to the parking lot after I go to Walmart and I will realize I have a case of pop underneath the shopping
Oh,
cart that I did not pay for. Oops. I mean, we all do it.
yeah.
Integrity means I go back in and I pay the $6 for the case of Coke. Okay, that's integrity. So we have to do the things that align with the value. That's how we make it real. The same principles apply in our business. What we have to do is be clear, like really articulate. If integrity in our business is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, okay,
Mm,
so that relates to ownership. I want people to take ownership of their work. I don't want to have to supervise all of them. So I can articulate what those behaviors should look like. When I think about kindness, what does kindness look like? Well, again, it relates to how we treat each other and how we treat our clients. I can be very articulate about what that looks like, what that feels like, because I
mm,
should be able to feel kindness and feel integrity. So I can be very clear about what that is. And then I can roll that into my recruitment process. So when I start thinking about job descriptions, I can say those things in a job description. So
right.
phrases like, the right fit for our culture does this, says that, behaves
Mm,
this way. That's what's going to attract the right person who believes in the value the same way we do. Because we can define integrity several different ways, right? But if I say what integrity looks like in our business, in the job description, the person that defines it the same way is going to be like, holy smoke, this is like my perfect job. This is what I've been looking for. I can't wait to get started. How do I submit my application? Right?
Right.
But to be very intentional about this work for ourselves, for our business, for our culture, for our team.
Yeah. Yeah. Being very intentional, like you said, from the very first point of contact, which is, the job description or whatever you're putting out
Yes.
there,
Yes.
is so important. I'm sure that people could come in and just bamboozle you and say they're all these things and do great in the job interview. And then, as time progresses, we kind of see they don't really embody these values. I mean, or maybe they're, I don't know, something's going on in their life. So how would you
Yes.
walk me through, like, as a leader? I guess it's more than just, probably it's more than just at the interview stage when we're talking about culture. Is there something we can do? Like, do we bring this into team meetings? Do we have like a monthly, reminder about culture? Or how do places of business do this? Like, how do they remind people of what the culture is? Because we're so forgetful, right?
Totally.
Yeah, we just forget.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, we want to weave it right from the start through the recruitment process. And let me be clear, when it comes to recruitment, nobody bats 1,000. But if everybody thinks they're a recruiter. Oh yeah, I can go to Google and Google 10 interview questions and that's fine. No, your interview questions actually need to reflect some of these values. You need to ask people, give me an example of when
Right.
you had to display integrity. Right?
Right.
A
Yeah.
real example from their previous life, and then dig and dig and dig. You ask questions that are based on what you want to measure. Now, you said it, Angela. Sometimes people's values shift. Our organizations are living things. So
Yeah.
the way we grow our business and the way our business changes and evolves is going to shift too. And sometimes that means those people no longer fit. It happens. We have to have them exit with integrity and dignity. Again, that's another podcast. But we can build these values. It should be woven through everything we do. So be super intentional about it. We can start every team meeting with a values moment. Okay, everyone, thanks for coming to the team meeting today. Let's go around and talk about how we showed kindness. One way, personal, professional, with a client, with each other. Let's all give one example of that, right? So we can be super intentional about it. We can make it part of our performance management. So we are measuring, right, how that works. We are rewarding people for the right behaviors. Again, behaviors are linked to our values. They're not just monetary KPIs. Those are important. But if all we're measuring is how much money we make or don't make, we are not measuring all the right things, right?
Yeah.
So those are two very clear delineated ways to do this. There are 1,000 different ways to make sure our values are alive in our business every single day and in every interaction we have internally, externally, clients, vendors, each other.
I like that. I like the values moment. That's a great way to bring it back in without talking down to anybody either. Like, okay, now I'm going to remind you of the rules, right? It's not like that. It's like
That's
just
not how it
bringing it.
works.
Yeah, it's just bringing
We
it
have
back
to
to their
internalize
mind.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Me telling my team, be kind. That doesn't help. Everybody's going to think about that differently. What I need to do is talk about, what does it mean for you to be kind? What does that look like for you?
Yeah.
How do you bring more kindness to yourself and then to everyone you interact with? That's how we weave this into everything we deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And, talking about the bottom line, like, I know happy employees are productive employees. Like, I teach corporate fitness. I teach kickboxing sometimes at night, and I've done corporate fitness. And that was, in the brochure I give out, it talks about that, like happy, healthy,
Yeah.
employees are, better for the company in the end, right? So you're spending a little bit on this and spending a little bit on someone like you to help with the culture and all that. But in the end, the ROI is there for sure.
It's
So,
significant
yeah.
because you're right. Happy people make our clients happy. And when our
Yeah.
clients are happy, they bring us more work and more clients. They become our greatest promoters.
Yep.
And when we have more clients and more people bringing us work, that's when our revenue goes up. And then we can really reinvest in our culture and right? Like the math is very simple. The execution is slightly more complex.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with us as the business owner, as the leader. And we don't often think of ourselves as a leader, right? Especially when we've bootstrapped our own business. Well, I'm an entrepreneur.
Right.
Well, no, you're also a leader. It's critical that you think about yourself that way.
Even if you're just a leader to your clients, like if you don't have employees
Yes.
or contractors, you are that leader. Like, you know, um, yeah, I've worked, a lot of people that I work with, they've left their corporate job because of stuff like this. And
Yes.
they want to do entrepreneurship because it's like, I'm the boss, I control everything, I control my own culture. I don't want to be stressed out anymore. But then sometimes we let the client treat us poorly, or we end
Right.
up treating the client poorly,
Right.
kind of perpetuating that cycle anyway. So we do have to work on ourselves, even if we're just a solo, because we are managing people. I mean, we're working with clients, unless you've got a product-based business or whatever. But most of
But
us
then
are
you're
working.
working with vendors, right?
Yeah, it's something, right? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
and listen, you lead every day in a whole sorts of ways. If you are a parent,
it's
that's
true.
your
Yeah.
biggest leadership job right there. If you are a parent, you need to think about yourself as a leader because you are leading tiny humans, right?
Yes.
Too many people do not think about themselves as a leader in their own family. If you are
Yeah.
in a partnership with someone, right? If you are romantically linked to another human, you are a leader in your relationship. You lead in your community. If you serve on a board, if you work on, support your kids' hockey team, if you're sitting in the stands, you're a leader. If you hold the door for someone else, you're leading. If you let someone go in front of you in the checkout because they got 3 things in their arms, you're leading. You lead 1,000 times every single day. The problem is
Mm,
that we don't take that job seriously. That's
no.
where it falls apart. And if you are not thinking about yourself as a leader in your business,
Mm,
it's going to cause you all sorts of problems and it's going to cost you money.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
good thing to think about. Yep. All very important points, about being a leader and actually developing that muscle, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about people pleasing, because I know that was a point that I did wanna cover. So,
Yes. Let's do it.
I used to be that way too,
Mhm.
just how I grew up, right? I think a lot of
Yes.
women are that way.
Yes.
We're just something about us. So how did you personally overcome that challenge of being a people pleaser? And again, what strategies do you recommend for
Yeah.
leaders who struggle with that?
Yeah. I'm like the team lead. We meet every Wednesday, bring wine, joke, but like for real, a lot of us are women in particular, we certainly men as well.
Yeah.
And that people pleasing absolutely comes from our family of origin,
Yeah.
right? And then it is ingrained through a number of societal pieces that we encounter. And what it does is it has us hustling to make everyone else happy,
Mm,
sacrificing our own happiness, usually, to the point of overwhelm and sometimes complete exhaustion, right? And then we can get into this pleaser rebellion. This is a Gretchen Rubin phrase, but we get to the point where we're like, that's it. I quit. I'm on strike. You guys are a bunch of jerks, right? I've certainly
mm,
done that. And actually, what that does is it really damages our relationships. And so it was really key for me to understand that and manage that, first and foremost in my own personal life, but then also in my business. Because I could run around making my clients happy all day long and never feel completely satisfied or fulfilled, like I'm serving properly in my business. And I want to be clear, there's a difference between being of service and being a doormat. And if you're being a people pleaser, you're being a doormat. You're letting people walk all over you.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anybody any good.
Right.
Right. So this is, I mean, this is the story of my life, right? What I uncovered, it came very much to a head for me during COVID. So I launched my business, High Voltage Leadership, in October of 2019. So we just celebrated 5 years, which is great. But we all know what happened only a few months later in March. And of course, we were all terrified. We were all overwhelmed. We were all untethered and dysregulated. I mean, we just did not know from one day to the next what was going to happen. We were scared for ourselves and our loved ones. Our economies crashed. My small business had just launched, and I thought, oh, there's no future here at all. And that very first Christmas of 2020, I had a brand new grandbaby. He was 6 months old. And that's when we were told we couldn't spend Christmas together. And I don't know about you, Angela, but I love Christmas. That's one of my favorite. I'm actually kind of borderline ridiculous. But anyways, I was devastated. I was devastated that I could not spend the first Christmas with my beautiful new grandbaby, and I was going to have to do that on Zoom. It felt so overwhelming. It was also really cold, and it's really dark here in Canada. Physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, it just felt very dark and very heavy. And at that time, I had a friend recommend to me a book and a program called Positive Intelligence. The book and the research was done by a man named Shirzad Chamine. And now the program that he has developed based on his research and on this philosophy. But the idea is that we have 10 ways we self-sabotage. The pleaser is just one of them. Pleaser is just one of them. But that there are tools and techniques we can use that will help us get a grip on that saboteur conversation. So for you and I, a lot of that is that need to please. We know that it's not the right way to go about it, but we don't quite know how to stop, because the truth is, on the inside, we feel like we're not enough and that we need other people's approval and praise in order to be good enough. That's what it comes down to. That's the conversation in our head. Now, other people believe that it's got to be perfect in order to be good enough. Some people believe they have to be in control. Other people believe they can't have any confrontation. They got to avoid. Like, we have different ways, right? We're all different humans.
Right.
But the idea in this program is that we can build the mental muscles. We can retrain our brain so that when we feel that very deep need to please, that we can pause and we can reflect and we can recognize that that's what we're doing, that it isn't serving us or anyone else. And we can shift into a more sage space where we can have empathy for ourselves, knowing that we really just want to be liked. We want people to like us.
Yeah.
Right? We want to have great relationships, but that this isn't the way to do it. And then we can explore other options and on perspectives, and we can be more creative in the way we approach relationships. And then we can move forward with really intentional action, not just running around pleasing all the time. Right? So our connections with ourselves and with others shift. So what I did is I took the program, and I'll tell you, it changed everything for me. It's work that I still do 4 years later. Now it's a program that I run. And in 7 weeks, I help people recognize what their saboteurs are. And yes, a lot of pleasers, right? And then help them create the mental muscles so that they can rewire that need to please, or that need to be perfect, or that need to avoid, or that need to control. And I'll tell you, it's such gratifying work, because people come out on the other side of 7 weeks and they feel different.
Yeah, it's almost like therapy, like you're a coach / therapist almost when you're doing that.
I mean, there's some cognitive behavioral therapy pieces in here. There's some positive psychology, performance psychology, and of course, the neuroscience. Like, this is your brain. This is your brain that's doing this to you. So there's elements of that. I am not a therapist.
Right.
But we use some of the same tools and techniques. That is true.
Totally. Yeah. Even in the work I do, the branding space,
Yeah.
like I use some psychology, like there's a
Right.
psychology of why people buy, how they
Right.
buy. Like I'm not a therapist, but like psychology kind of touches everything.
Of course it does.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like we're all just like walking trauma response bags, trauma response,
Well,
like,
yeah, you know what?
like
We kind of are,
we
right?
kind of are. Um, until we learn to peel those layers away, they're part of us. Like a book
Yes.
that I read actually, and I had someone, I did a branding program, and this lady and I kind of hit it off. We connected and we kept in touch. And she, as I was talking and I was speaking like this, like really self doubt and like self deprecating and things like this, and she's like, "Are you? Were you raised by somebody who was a narcissist?" I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, this is my story, and I was you." Like she saw herself in me at that point, and she's like, "Read this book," and it was called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Something like that. And
Yeah.
I just like, I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know at
Yeah.
that point. Sometimes we don't even know what our traumas are, right? And it's
Totally.
like, oh my gosh, this is my life. This is
Yeah.
like a narrative, exactly like a documentary of my life. And
Yeah.
from that helped me change. So I understand, like
Yeah.
when you say you had a dramatic change and turnaround from that, I totally understand that. Mine was from a book and from that lady that helped me, but
I love it.
um, yeah, it helped. But
Yeah.
yeah, entrepreneurship, I'm telling you, it's like therapy in a
It
way.
is. And I think, I mean, every day is a school day when you're an entrepreneur. You're always, always learning. And one of the most important things you can learn about is yourself. Like that's the thing, is that it is so revealing as we build our own businesses of what we're capable of, where our resilience lies, where we get hijacked, right? I mean, some of us, I don't claim to have a ton of trauma, but I certainly get hijacked by these voices in my head, this head trash. We all have it. Congratulations, whether you can hear it or not, you got head trash too. And the idea that we have the opportunity to recover and reinvent and continually, you said, peel back the layers of the onion. Like we get to discover something new about ourselves in the entrepreneurial process every single day. And some of these pieces run pretty deep,
Yeah, they
right?
do. They
What they
do.
really do. Yeah.
I didn't know, I say this all the time. I didn't know what I didn't know when I started my
Yeah.
business, but I don't think I would have started if I knew
Right.
everything. But now looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's kind of this weird dichotomy.
100%. I'm totally unemployable, right?
Yeah,
Like
yes,
I'm
yes.
really, I don't know if I'd be capable of going back to a regular job. And that's okay. That's okay. I think we have to come to accept some of these beautiful, flawed parts of ourselves,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. We are the
yeah,
sum of our experiences,
totally.
and the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. And you know what? Um, we also get to be in control of the narrative, right?
Mm,
We get to, whether we're working in our own business or working for someone else, we get to decide who we want to be every single day when our feet hit the floor. And
right?
so if you don't like who you're being, and you don't like the voice in your head that's telling you you're not good enough or smart enough or pretty enough or skinny enough or successful, any of that garbage, you got the opportunity to fix it. That's the beautiful part. We get to reinvent every day.
Yeah, I think we forget that, and a lot of us live life on autopilot, kind of
Yeah.
unconsciously, but yeah, as long as you're breathing, there's opportunity for more, right?
Opportunity. 100%.
Can you share an example? Like I know you shared from your side of things, but can you share a client example of, a great transformation that was made with your help? Like maybe their culture was completely obliterated, and how you came in and helped, or like maybe a one-on-one client that you've helped. Like, is there anything that stands out in your mind as far as like this was a really transformational experience for one of your clients? And you don't have to share details, of course, but
No, 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 of course not. I mean, always what I do is private and confidential, but I can give you the big themes. Like just
yeah.
this morning, I talked with a client who, this is the day after the US election. There are a lot of big emotions for people. It's been stressful, for all of us. But for our American cousins, there's a lot of weight here. Their country's at stake. And I was working with a client this morning who came in feeling extremely emotional. Really feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, disappointment. And those are big emotions. Like, to feel like you are helpless, that is really heavy. That's a heavy, big emotion. And so what we did is, first and foremost, we talked about that. It is really critical that we lean in to those big, deep emotions. We are okay. We are built to have those emotions. And so with help and with the right space, we can safely step into them and really feel them and process them. Right. And that's the best way to do it. It's when we hide that stuff, when we push it down and push it away, that's when it festers. So that was the first thing we did, is we just stepped into the emotion. Right. And I just got to hold her in that space. And I know that sounds very coachy and woo-woo, but it's really important that people feel safe to experience that hard stuff. And then we did some of the positive intelligence practice. So there's tools inside of that program that allow us to really get into the right space in our own head, to manage that saboteur conversation, turn the volume, the heat down on that, so that we can actually really step into a more safe space. And the first thing we got to do there is have empathy for ourselves. And that's what we did. And I got to tell you, by the time we got through our hour together, we were talking about what her life purpose was. We found some gifts and opportunities, even in this really hard day. And what does she want to do? Because she doesn't want to be hopeless and helpless and overwhelmed and disappointed. She wants to be positive and kind. She wants to make change and create community. And so that's where we landed the conversation. And that was really positive and powerful for her and very transformative. Doesn't mean that she's not going to experience some of those big emotions again. We're on a roller coaster here, folks. That's okay. But she's going to be able to more easily get back to the place where she can find gifts and opportunities. She can shut off the trash talk and really connect to the things that are most important to her, so she can move those forward. So that's one example. That's one-on-one. I mean, certainly inside of organizations, again, I get to have these kinds of conversations. So sometimes clients come to me because they're like, hey, we want to grow and do this work. Other times clients come to me because, hey, we're having trouble, we're struggling. It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
And so, I get to go into organizations who are having trouble connecting and communicating. I get to work with a leader who is saying to me, I'm not sure I'm being very effective here, and I don't feel good about it. Right? So this particular organization has about 15 employees. They're growing very quickly. That always seems to be an inflection point, right? They're experiencing pretty rapid growth. And the business owner recognized that what's happening right now is not going to work. Like, the wheels are already a little wobbly in the business. And she recognized that she wasn't doing her best work, right? She wasn't being effective. She feels overwhelmed, unproductive. She's got into the self-judgment. The head trash is going, and she feels out of control. And so what a beautiful place. It's not too far gone to turn back. But we started talking about, okay, what's our mission? What are we trying to change in the world? Because that's where the passion comes from. What's the vision? Where do we want to be in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? Like, let's get out of the weeds and start thinking about what the trajectory looks like. Again, more passion. And then, what are the things that are most important to us? That's when we can bring the team in. And it creates beautiful connection when we can talk about, how do we work together? What's important to us here right now? Well, that is a really fun, energetic, cool conversation. And from there, we got some values. We've got some behaviors. We can start to really delineate. What does great performance look like? Well, it's this, and this. Well, now you're off to the races, because that's the stuff that goes into your recruitment. So As we're looking to add team, we know who we're looking for. And as we're looking to help them grow and perform, we know what some of those measures and metrics are. That's powerful work. That's really, so that's the work I love to do. It's really fun and invigorating.
Yeah, that would be. And being that third neutral party in there is helpful too, because you can be the referee, so nobody's doing the blame game thing. And
100%.
right.
And I get to ask the beautiful questions. Like there's something real powerful about being like, so I know I'm new here, or I know I'm the outside.
Yes.
Like, I'm seeing this thing. What is this? Oh,
Right.
yeah, we don't really talk about that. Oh, I think we should talk about that. Let's talk about that right now.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a powerful position because you've
Yes. I don't have
That's
emotional
awesome.
attachment to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. And I think what you said also about having empathy for ourselves, like when we look at it, we would never talk to our friend that way, the way that we talk to ourselves or think about them the way we think about ourselves. Sometimes it's so funny how we do that. We don't really do a good job of being gracious with ourselves.
My best friend is, in fact, a coach. She coaches me a lot. And she says to me when I start to trash talk myself, don't talk to my best friend like that.
I like that.
My best friend that way.
I
My
like
best
that.
friend is awesome. She doesn't deserve that. And I'm like, oh man, like that. If we could all approach it like that, like I'm my own best friend and nobody's going to talk to my best friend like that. If that's the
Yeah.
conversation we could have internally, we'd be super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, has a team, like I know you work with leaders, but has a team ever sort of pulled a coup d'etat or like a intervention where they're like, you need to help our leader? Like, has it ever come from a team? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've absolutely had like, sort of that second in command, maybe like an
Yeah.
operations manager come to me and be like, we really need your help.
I just wonder how those situations go because
Yeah.
the the affected party is not really aware or willing. So how does
So
that work?
I'm pretty good at working with tough customers. And so I haven't had a whole team come. Like I've certainly arrived in a business and had a team being like, "Oh my God, we're so glad you're here." And I've had that before. But I've had sort of that second in command say to me, "We really need your help." And I've been able to go then to the business owner and the senior leader and say, "Hey, so I'm seeing some things. Are you seeing some? Oh, yeah. Well, they don't do this and they don't do, like, often it's a lot of blame.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, have you been clear about what you're like this thing that you're looking for? Or have you articulated, do they know that they own that? Well, they should know. Oh, okay. But what I'm hearing is that you're not actually certain. And so again, because I get to play dumb,
Yeah.
right? I can very quickly start to include the leader and show them, hey, with you leading the right way, with you embracing leading differently, this is what can happen. Your team is ready for it. Are you ready for it? And 99 times out of 100, they say yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I,
Yeah.
I like that you have that sort of sneaky strategy. I just got a vision of Columbo. If you're of a certain age, you remember Columbo where he would act kind of dumb and then he would come back and be like, oh, and then he would like drop a bomb,
Yes.
and ask the big question that nobody, the big elephant in the room question.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. And I'm also really
love
good
it.
at just calling out the hard
Yeah.
thing. Business owner, do you recognize that your behavior is impacting your team?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Well, it's happening, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Lindsay. I could talk to you forever. But it's been really interesting and some great advice here. I know we were talking a lot about culture, and I'm just going to put this up for people. We'll have this in the show note links, but you have a workbook, a values workbook that people can download. I assume that's a great first step in just
Right.
getting people to think about their values.
Yes. Yep. You
Yeah.
know what? It'll take you about half an hour and it'll get your brain working. It'll give you some really important food for thought. And working on our own personal values is a great place to start when we think about our leadership or building a really empowered culture in our business.
Yeah, awesome. So guys, download that book. I'll have it in the show notes as well when this episode goes up on my Spotify. And other than that, where can people find you and support you online?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find me on my website, which is highvoltageleadership.ca. And certainly we're appearing on LinkedIn, and I'm Lindsay White there. So come and connect with me. We're on Instagram, and my handle is at highvoltcoach. And you can also find me on Facebook, Lindsay White or High Voltage Leadership. So, and I love to connect. So if you have questions, please send me a DM. Would love to answer those.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining me today. And thanks everybody for listening in. We will catch you next time on